Okay, well, welcome to the Window into Paris webcast live from COP21 in Paris, France. My name is Megan, and I am the programs coordinator at Climate Generation, a Will Steger legacy. And we are a nonprofit in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we educate and empower people to engage in solutions to climate change. So we recognize that educators are critical messengers of climate and energy literacy for hundreds of students every year, including the class we have here in Pine Island, Minnesota. And so we are leading a group of 10 education ambassadors to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change 21st Conference of the Parties, which is a mouthful, but for short we call it COP21, and that is where Mr. Johnson is live right now this whole week. So these teachers are engaging in these international climate negotiations as both learners and communicators back to their classrooms and communities. And they represent diverse subject areas and grade levels and educational settings from around the entire country. So this year's negotiations have a goal of achieving a legally binding and universal agreement in all the countries on climate with the aim of keeping global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. So that is what all this talk and all these negotiations are aiming to achieve these 2 weeks. And today we have Mr. Johnson with us, who is in the blue zone right now of COP21 in Paris, who is going to be talking about what it's been like for him to be there. And then we have his students in Pine Island, Minnesota on the call as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Johnson to kind of give us a rundown of what he's been up to, and then we'll have time at the end for questions. So here you go, Mr. Johnson.
Great, thanks, Megan. Well, before I go over what we've done, I just want to talk to you about where I am right now. I'm in the, well, Hall 6 is what it's called, but if we look over here, this is the hallway where all these negotiations are actually happening. And there's a ton of people who would just love to see this, see what's going on. All of these meeting rooms, I mean, I'm not even allowed into most of them because there's just such high-level people and important decisions being made that are going to affect our world. So this is Hall 6, and just they've got little scenes. Some really famous artists have helped put together kind of reminders, visual reminders of kind of what's going on the Earth and kind of what is at stake. So I'm really excited to be doing it from this room, and yeah. So let's talk about what I've done so far in Paris. Let me pull it up, okay? So we've been getting around on the metro, which was super intimidating when we first got here. It's very confusing. There's a ton of trains, but all the train stations have these big signs in them. This sign says we can't tell our kids that we didn't know. This one says 7 billion inhabitants, one planet. And then, so getting around the metro. Yesterday I was able to get to the Eiffel Tower, which is way cooler than I thought it would be. It's huge. It's just gigantic and pretty awesome. Didn't have time to go up it, but there's that. We also got to just wander around it some nights, finding some churches and some parks that we just don't even know what they are, but Paris is pretty cool, in short. So we know a few weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago now, there were those shootings, and where those shootings happened, there are still memorials, there are still candles, there are still, this is the scene at one of the squares where that happened. Okay, as we were getting here, this is about 2 minutes into our arrival at the actual conference, the president of Mozambique just happened to want to take a picture with us, and we all got a picture with the president of Mozambique. That was pretty awesome for the first moment. These are the 10 other educators that came with. Okay, your position statements. This is a picture out of the book that we handed to President Obama's science advisor. Okay, that's John Holdren. Okay, we had a long meeting with him where we got to chat, we got to talk, we had a long discussion about how we as a country are trying to tackle climate change and how education is so important, and it was really great. When I get back to school, I'd love to share with you what I said during that discussion. But it was really something to get to go to the embassy and give him this book. He promised us he would try to get it into President Obama's hands, but our president's pretty busy. But he was going to try. At any rate, it was a very powerful meeting. It was great. Okay, we were able to go to what was an evening with Robert Redford. Robert Redford's a famous actor and producer and director and everything else. He's also an environmental advocate. Well, here he is standing with 3 indigenous peoples who have already been affected by climate change and just trying to get their stories out there. The chief you see right there, his tribe is having a harder and harder time getting water, and he wants to know why we are cutting down his trees. And the woman next to Robert Redford right there, she was in, her island was flooded during high tide and just a thunderstorm, and the hospital was flooded, and people were basically rolled out into the sun just to sit there in the sun in their hospital beds. And finally the woman to the right of her, she lives on the Marshall Islands, and the Marshall Islands are going to flood since they're only about 1 meter above sea level. And so their entire homes might disappear. And so their whole pitch was trying to get even stronger action on climate change, because they're already feeling the effects, and it's bad. It's not good. So this was a great evening. Okay. We've also been getting around doing roundtables. Climate Generation has done a great job setting up roundtables with important people. The 2 women you see in front here, these are state representatives. Okay, a former state senator dressed in black there, that's Ellen Anderson. She works at the university now at the Sustainability Center, and she's in charge of just ridiculous stuff at the U of M. And the woman in the Minnesota shirt, she's a state representative that we've been hanging out with basically all the time, and we get to hear from her, and it's really kind of interesting to see from that lens. If I get solar panels, it's because of legislation that she wrote last year. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, now today we got to meet the people who did Pole to Paris. If you look up at Norway, one climate researcher was upset about what was happening in the Arctic, and he ran 3,000 kilometers to get here to Paris. And the other climate researcher, who was working down in Antarctica, bicycled 17,000 kilometers. You can see the path to get to Paris. And he's been at it for about 4 months trying to get here. And we met them today, and I'm really excited because they're up for just doing a Skype session with my class, and we can hear firsthand what's going on in the Arctic or what's going on in Antarctica. And really, really cool, nice dudes. Here are their names. The one on the left, Dan, he's the one from Antarctica. And, you know, he's just he wanted to do something to help raise awareness and say this is important. Erland on the right, he's from the Arctic, and he feels the same way. One exciting thing is that Dan, was able to answer that question of why is the sea ice extent in Antarctica getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's, you guessed it, because of climate change. So I can explain more about that when I get back. So I'm excited to have these two contacts. They're really great. This is a picture of the COP21, and if you watch that short video I sent to you all, students, you should have an idea that it's just huge, gigantic. Right now I'm in that light green building to the left. The dark green building, that's really tall, and that's the main hall. So when President Obama came and spoke, that's where he was speaking from. But this place is just gigantic. There's just so many places to go and be. I basically just walked for the first day I was here, just to try to get my head around it all. It was very, very overwhelming. Down on the bottom right, you can see that there are those all the nations that are here, and 190 flags is a lot of flags. So it's pretty amazing what we have set up here. Okay, well, this is kind of why we're here. We're trying to limit climate change, and 2 degrees is the thing that people keep talking about, but 2 degrees isn't safe. 2 degrees is a goal that people hope we can still make, but it's not something that anyone feels is safe. Okay, 1.5 would be a better goal, but at this point 1.5, if you see on this graph under scenario, it's inevitable. So what we need to happen here in Paris has to happen. In short, if we go too far to the right, it's really bad, really, really bad. So that's what we're trying to prevent here. Just outside the COP, got these cool electricity generating turbines. Kind of random. Now inside, this was at the U.S. Center. This is a lead researcher from NASA showing us the satellites as they go around. He showed us such incredible data that they have on what's exactly happening to the poles, what's happening to climate or carbon dioxide, all that other stuff. I have all of those videos now. It's pretty great. Okay, this person is the lead U.S. negotiator, and his name is Todd Stearns, and I mean, you can barely get near the guy because he's so busy and so important, and I've seen him once this whole time I've been here. And yeah, this is the person that's trying to get a agreement that we can all agree to. Okay, so here are some individuals that came out of their rainforest just to say, please, please, please make this deal as strong as you can, because if we get flooded, I mean, all of the Bengal that live in their area are going to disappear with their habitat. And so, really powerful story. Okay, so what's really being talked about right now is how long we want this agreement to be before it kicks in, and what's called ambition, how much we want it to ramp up over time. So the United States, I've been in press conferences, I've been in lots of meetings where we're trying to talk to our negotiators and stuff like that, and talk to them about, well, are we pushing for ambitious goals? Are we pushing for goals that will actually make a difference as time goes on? And from everything we're being told in here, we're trying to pull a strong agreement out of this, and we're trying to finagle and finesse whatever we can to make something that is not a disaster. Okay. The second point here, ratcheting the targets. So you heard that every country submitted what they want to do to address climate change, but the hope is, by all these environmentalists, is including myself, is that if we're going to ratchet those up, we're going to say we're going to do more because now it's easier to do more. So maybe in 5 years, the price of everything has gone down even more, which it will, and we can all say, wow, we can save a lot of money by installing lots of wind turbines. So let's ratchet up our target from 31% to 45%. And that would make a huge difference in the amount of emissions and hopefully help get us to our goal of staying under 2 degrees, which doesn't look all that possible. So it's really important that there's ambitious targets that get ratcheted up over time. And the last point here is, should it be legally binding or not? This is something that's really sticky because pretty much every country in the world wants a legally binding agreement that we all sign and we all try to do because we're all in this kind of together. The only problem is the United States can't have a legally binding agreement because our Congress won't let that happen. Won't agree to it, will block it, and so it's our Congress that's kind of throwing the monkey wrench into it. And so we're trying to work around that, and they're trying to figure out exactly what to do because all the countries in the world want something that will make a big impact on this because it's important, and they need to come up with something that's not as strong as it could be, but it's still strong. So that's what's really being debated right now. Now I know there's a meeting coming up. There's a meeting coming up here at 9 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock right now, and they have a lot of room set aside for it. So I'm really excited about that. Something hopefully is going to be announced, but at best they'll have something finished by tomorrow. It'll probably be more like Saturday, maybe, from what people are saying. So that's kind of what I've been doing, where the negotiations are, everyone I've been talking to, everything I've been thinking. Okay. So that's most of what I have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have some questions in Pine Island.
I'm not hearing anything.
Huh.
Can the class still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Could somebody say one word?
One word.
Okay.
All right, so
Microphone a little.
So Mr. Johnson, did you want to start the question and answer session?
Yes, that will work.
Okay, so I think right here, this is probably right here going to be the best point for them just to come and stand up and ask a question.
Yep. Perfect.
All right. So right now, if you are a question person, just so we kind of have a sense of where you are, just put one hand up in the air if you're a question person. So it's right here. Perfect. What we're going to do, we'll start right here. If you can just come and stand next to you or stand here, then they'll be able to see you.
What is the U.S. role in Paris?
Well, the United States has a big. We're emitting a lot, and we are trying to bring other countries along in getting a good agreement. It's really heartening to hear that we're pushing countries to do more, because in the past our country's been the one that other countries are trying to push to get to do more. And so our role in Paris is to try to do what we can to address this problem. If that helps. Who's next?
How can we get CO2 emissions peaked?
By consuming less energy would be the short answer. By changing our habits, by investing in green technology. And you know what we're doing here, you've heard me say it, you've read it in the blog. What we're doing at this conference is trying to lower emissions from the top down. So how countries build power plants and what we spend the huge money on, but what each and every person sitting in that room or people that are hearing my voice, what everyone's doing is causing emissions. So everything you plug into the wall, every car you drive, everything you buy even, has a footprint behind it. And so lowering that is absolutely huge, because 50% of the emissions of the world come from 10% of the population, and you guys are all a part of that 10%. Okay, I can see some of you not really looking, paying attention, but you should know that you guys are a part of that 10% who are causing 50% of the emissions that are going in the world. And to seriously address the problem, we need to do different things. So, I hope that answers your question. Yes?
Okay. How are these talks different than the other ones?
That's a great question. The last talks were a disaster, and nobody wants another disaster. So what we're doing pretty much everything differently right now. We had countries come with their own pledges, so it was voluntary, and countries want to address the problem now instead of being told what to do. So countries are coming with their own pledges, and they are trying to step up and make an agreement that would actually be meaningful. So these talks are different because it's structured differently, it's more organized. They had a draft that they've been working on since the very beginning, and it's going really well from everything I'm hearing here.
Jeff, how long do we have until multi-disasters occur?
Well, it depends on where you are, because the drought in California is a disaster. The wildfires that are making hundreds of thousands of people sick in Indonesia is a disaster. The hurricanes that are getting stronger, Hurricane Haiyan and then Hurricane Patricia, were the strongest two, and they were both in the last 2 months. Those were both disasters as well. So that answers your question right there. This is what we're seeing with only 1 degree of warming. So 2 degrees is not going to be just twice as bad, and it would be even more. So, yeah. Dylan? Hi, Dylan.
How long have you known about this?
I didn't hear that. What's that?
How long have you known about this?
How long have we known about this?
Yeah.
Well, it didn't get much attention until maybe the 70s. And then in the 80s, people started really talking about it. The 90s, it was like, hey, this is actually a deal. When I was your age, back in probably 2000, I learned about it. And at that time, it was, well, scientists think in the future this is what's going to happen. Well, now that I teach it to you myself, this is what's happening now. So we've known about it for at least 20 years, and people keep saying we've known about it for 20, 25 years, and just now we're getting around to doing something about it. So yeah. Next.
Are things looking, or is there anyone that is rejecting climate change and global warming at the conference?
No. No, it's there are countries dragging their feet, mostly because their entire economy is based on oil, but that's about it. They, that's even just 2 days ago, Exxon, the largest oil company in the United States, basically said we need a strong climate deal because we want to live on this earth too. So the oil company is saying you guys need to limit greenhouse gas emissions, and you need to do it now, and we need to get ahead of this thing because it's going to be a disaster. The people who work at Exxon I mean, they're not environmentalists. They work at Exxon, but they still know that for us to live in this world, we need to do this. And so that's why they went ahead and said that. So, frankly, no. No one here is questioning anything. It's just a matter of getting it to be as strong as possible. And the consensus is that it's not going to be as strong as we would all like, but maybe we'll be surprised. So, yeah.
What kind of meetings are there, and how much do you get to contribute to them?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
What kind of meetings are there, and how much do you get to contribute to them?
Oh, right. So the meetings, there are so many meetings every day. There are meetings for the nonprofits like, you know, World Wildlife Federation or Sierra Club. There's meetings for the actual negotiators. There's meetings for just so many different groups. I participate in them. I've mostly been an observer and trying to learn about the process and learn about how everything is going on. But the amount of things going on in this giant conference center is just unbelievable. And so just being here and knowing all the things that are going on and how complex the solution to this problem is going to have to be is really what's impressive to me. So, yeah. What other questions do you guys have?
If the climate change, if the climate change plan works, would we be fine, or will we have to still worry about stuff?
So if I'm hearing you right, if we get a deal here in Paris, will we still have to worry? The answer is yes. Unfortunately, the voluntary contributions that countries are coming with basically still warm the Earth up by 3 degrees. And 3 degrees is too many. And so that's what I was trying to talk about before with ambition and ratcheting it up. So basically, if we make a climate deal and say, here's what we're going to do for the next 15 years, there's no way we're going to keep it below even 2.5 degrees. But if we have a deal now and we revisit the deal in 5 years and then in 5 years again, and each time crank it up each time, then maybe there's a chance. So that's what people are looking for here. So even though a deal is important and good and historic because it's the first thing that happened, it's still a deal that's 20 years too late and too little. So it needs to get more and faster. I wish the answer was yes to that, but the answer is more complicated. So there must be more questions out there.
Are things looking good? Do you think the problem will be solved at the conference?
I'm sorry, did you say something? I didn't hear a word.
Are things looking good? Do you think the problem will be solved at this conference?
So a lot of people think this conference is going to be the end, the finish line, whereas it's more like a step. You know, this is the first action we need to take, and hopefully it's a tipping point where individuals like you and me and everyone else say, I'm going to consume less, where cities start deciding, hey, we're going to start investing in renewable energy and we're going to start cleaning up our act, where states are going to start saying, hey, wait a second, you know, we can help fund this too. And all of these different things put together could solve the problem. But it's not going to just be from here in the top down. It's not going to just be me riding bicycle to work. It's got to be kind of all of the above. So it's a problem that threatens all of our futures, and it's serious. So I know I can't hold your attention very long, students, but this is something that is important. It's going to be the story of the rest of your life, and what happens here is the first step in that story. Okay. You heard that I heard from Al Gore. At the end of his little spiel, he said, when our children grow up, if they live in a world that is, you know, is struggling with hundreds of thousands of refugees and droughts and just a bad place to be, they're going to say to us, why didn't we fix it? But if our children live in a world that is not so bad and pleasant with green and life and happiness and stuff, it's because we started here in Paris. This is kind of the line here. If we don't do anything now, it's going to be too late. So
Exactly.
I think there was one more question. Alex?
Another question?
There's a couple more.
If all the top 5 highest CO2 emitting countries.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
Okay. If all of the top 5 highest CO2 emitting countries stop burning fossil fuels and only use renewable resources/energy, how would that affect the global average temperature rising?
If China, the United States, and India did that, not much of a problem anymore. Okay, China, United States, India, EU, and Brazil, problem solved. So the Earth would still be warming up for a while because we've emitted enough to basically warm the Earth up to probably 1.7 at this point. If we stop emitting today, if nobody burns any more gas or anything, the Earth is still going to warm up to almost 2 degrees just on its own. But like we've been saying, we got to cut down, and it's got to start soon. So, one more question, please.
Have they said anything about possibly coming to a conclusion on the whole situation, or haven't they said anything yet?
Everything I've been hearing is really positive and really saying we want an agreement. It's, you know, nothing is settled yet, so who knows, but it's remarkable how positive and how productive things are going right now. So there's still a lot of things that need to get worked out, and it's all really complicated in legalese, but there's a lot of hope that this is going to be that first step we need it to be. So, because all the countries in the world basically agree that this is something we have to deal with, and it's right now we have to deal with it. This is our chance.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter Johnson, for sharing what it's been like. Can we all give him a round of applause? I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us in Pine Island. And for Peter being in Paris, it's clear that you're passionate and invested in this work, and we need more people like you in the world, that's for sure. So I hope that your students become inspired because of your passion for this issue.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being a good audience, asking really good questions.